Well, he's a Nobel Prize-winning economist with eyes on European leaders, or better yet, a front-row seat, which is what happens when you spend the winter and spring in Milan. I'm pleased to welcome NYU professor and author Michael Spence. He's also an advisor to PIMCO. Michael, good to see you. Last time we spoke a few weeks ago, we've only seen Italian borrowing costs rise. They're basically at 7%. How high is too high for Italy to handle?
Well, 7%, Sarah, is too high if it lasts. So over here, we're making progress with the new government. The reforms seem to be passing the parliament. And so I think we can hope, at least hope, for some steady improvement as time goes on.
But none of it is inspiring confidence. We saw Mario Monti take the reins earlier. We saw him pass his austerity program, and yet we've seen borrowing costs rising and rising.
No, that's absolutely right. You know, I mean, the private investors and the markets in general are uncertain about whether this program will succeed and receive political support and do its job. They're also uncertain about the level of support that will be forthcoming from the ECB and the European Union generally. So there's lots of risk, and the markets aren't prepared to declare that we've turned a corner yet. So this is understandable, but the reform process is still important, and if it does succeed, it'll help bring stability to Europe.
Robert Mundell told me earlier this week that Mario Monti isn't a strong enough political leader, and perhaps Silvio Berlusconi should make a comeback to Italy to reform the economy. What do you think?
I mean, Mario Monti is a very talented person. I think he's a very good economist, has a good sense of what needs to happen. He does not have a long political career, so people wonder whether his reform package will get through the political process because of that kind of background. Thus far, it's going pretty well, I think, because the leadership generally in Italy, has come to view this as a serious and important time in the history of the country and the economy. So I'm cautiously optimistic. I don't think the Italians at this point would welcome a return of the old government and things that went with that.
Well, you've been watching several political leaders across Europe. Clearly, it's too late for them to get ahead of this crisis. What can they do next year to keep from falling too far behind?
Well, I think there's two things and they seem to want to do them in parallel, largely because the Germans want to do them in parallel. One is to make steady progress and not have big setbacks on fiscal centralization or some kind of more thorough union than they've had up till now to support the monetary union. And the second one is, even though they may not be willing to declare their willingness to back these countries that are in the reform process, they really need to do that. And so that would be the second thing. If the Italian yields, start to rise, you could quickly turn a manageable situation into an insolvent one, and Europe needs, Italy needs time, and Europe needs to help buy them some of the time.
But is there really any way that the leaders can get out of this gracefully after what we've seen in 2011, 15 summits, 5 crisis resolutions?
No, I wouldn't call whatever exit we're going to have graceful. I think at this point we're hoping for muddle through but successful in the end.
Who's the savior for Europe? Who are you looking to? The European Central Bank, the International Monetary Fund, the leaders themselves?
Yeah, no, this is one of those situations where everybody has to do their job, and it's a bus with a lot of wheels, and few of them come off, it won't work. So the Italians and the Spanish have to do their job. I think the European Union has to be prepared for the eventuality that a Greece or a Portugal might decide that it's in their interest to exit at some point. The ECB, with the backing of Germany and the other major countries, principally France, needs to do its job in making sure the banking systems keep functioning, and I would hope support the countries that are doing a responsible job with reform in supporting their sovereign debt and not letting the yields get out of hand. But the IMF has an important role too. It's technically competent. There's some monitoring to be done. There may be some funding from outside to come along that naturally comes through the IMF, Sarah. So I think it's one of those situations where there isn't a single savior, but if people take it seriously and everybody does their job, there's a path to to greater stability over the course of the coming year.
I also just want to ask you about emerging markets. That's our big theme today. We're going to be speaking in just a few minutes with Enrique Morales, former central banker of Brazil. You study emerging markets very closely. Your book, The Next Convergence, you just returned from a trip to China. They were there in 2008, 2009 to help save the world and pull us out of the depths of recession. If we go back into some sort of global downturn next year, will they be there again?
Well, that's an interesting question. They survived the crisis and the downturn in the major markets, the developed countries, pretty well. Their growth is slowing down, at least that part of the growth that's associated with the advanced countries, because we're having a bit of a downturn in Europe for sure, open question in America. I believe that the most likely scenario in the coming year is that the turbulence in both the United States and more so in Europe will actually cause some slowdown in the emerging economies. They have ways of defending themselves against that, but they're not complete and perfect. So I think you're seeing a slowdown in these countries, and if they're wise, they'll probably accept it and not try to completely counter it with fiscal and other measures.
All right, a slowdown in the emerging world. 7% Italian bond yields, totally unsustainable. Very special thanks to Michael Spence, winner of the 2001 Nobel Prize in Economics, professor at NYU Stern School of Business.